So, Harold Halibut, a unique science fiction story, handmade, hand created, with assets and actual miniatures, as you can see very often in those stop motions or clay motions movies. And I'm gonna greet and bring in Danny, who is the writer and co-helper in terms of voice acting and audio of the team. We're gonna chat a little bit about the game. He will give us a little bit of an insight. We're gonna have some footage running in the background, and you'll decide if you like it. Stick around. If those watching the VOD, let us know in the comments what you think of Harold Halibut, and if you wanted to have the full playthrough that we do here live, also edited and uploaded to the tubes. Chat, feel free to say hi YouTube, as you're gonna be on screen here and over in our chat as well. Hey, there we have him. There we have him. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Danny. But I think it's better to throw the ball towards you and you present yourself, who you are, what you do, and what is Harold Halibut.
Sure thing. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for the invitation and having me on the show. It's always amazing to be able to discuss the games you make with people who get it and want to hear about it. So yeah, thank you so much. And hello to everyone that's watching. I'm Danny. I'm a writer and narrative designer. Been in and around the industry for about 10 years now, which makes me feel a bit old. Don't know if you can see I've got some grey hairs coming at the side. That's all working at games. And yeah, I've worked across all sorts of different game genres. Spent a lot of time in the indie world working on lots of narrative games like Harold Halibut, and now I work in the AAA space. For the last 2.5 years, I've worked for Firesprite, a studio here in the UK. So I helped ship Horizon Call of the Mountain on PSVR2, and been working on something else that's heavily secret, as all games are these days. And I'm just about to start a new job actually at a new studio, but I can't announce that yet. So that's me. And Harold Halibut is an entirely handmade adventure game set on an Ark-like spaceship, so like a generation ship that is crash landed basically on a watery alien planet. And yeah, the game takes place, I can't remember exactly how many years, like 20 years or something, like after the crash. So there's already a generation of people on the ship who have never known anything else other than living kind of like under the surface of this alien ocean. And the game follows Harold, who you can see there talking to Warren of Warren's Water Wieners, and it's basically a story about his journey from the kind of mundane everyday life that he lives through to him finding something that is going to change his life forever, and how he copes with that, basically.
That sounds intriguing. Speaking of it sounds very futuristic, very sci-fi. Is it placed in our kind of timeline? Do the people there know of Earth, or is this completely like fictional world creation there? Like, is there like some parallels
absolutely.
to our known world?
Yeah, it's kind of like a parallel contemporary timeline. So what happened is kind of somewhat like after or during the Cold War, or like a version of the Cold War. This slightly retro-futuristic spaceship set off to try and kind of find a new planet in case of apocalypse on Earth. So it's obviously like not based too much on reality, but it's supposed to be kind of relatively like modern, but just what happened if they set off back then and have been isolated from Earth, kind of living, developing their own technology since then, like a little bit stuck in the past, even though they're in the future. And yeah, they you find out pretty early in the game, I won't say too much to not spoil it, but you find out fairly early in the game that they have received a message from Earth that they weren't expecting. So
okay, that sounds
and that
intriguing.
has lots of ramifications for the characters and how they think about what their place in life is, whether or not they'd want to go back to Earth, but none of them would get there in their lifetime, right? So it's something that becomes a topic of conversation for all of the characters. Yeah, everyone feels differently about it.
I think it's definitely an interesting premise in terms of like when you have to plan a journey let's call it journey to from A to B, but you have to plan it generations ahead because you, as the one planning it, will not make it in time. I mean, I'm not sure how far the tech will go. If there's like cryo sleeps and stuff like that you see very often in science fiction things, or if they actually have to live through generations in order to sustain the life on the ship. I'm very curious to find out more about that. We see here a
It's a
very
great.
unique kind of like boxy angles in camera in cinematic feel and vibes. Why
Mhm.
did you went for this art style, and was like how much of this is actually handmade and captured?
Sure, sure. So I'm probably going to butcher things a little bit here because it's so the core team. I can't remember now exactly who was there at the very beginning, but Ola, Onat, and Fabi, certainly three of the kind of main guys who kicked things off when they were at uni, I think. So they started. Harold Halibut started as like a project, like an art school project, and yeah, Onat was wanting to make handmade things, basically, and make like a very kind of handmade, tiny video game as a project. And long story short, I mean, there's a couple of interviews. There's one in like the New York Times where they explain this much better than I can. But the game we have here like just ballooned from that initial little experiment of making these handmade characters. So yeah, obviously the like you say, the kind of cinematic point of view, the presentation, that kind of framing, is in large part due to the physicality of it, right? Because there's actually little rooms, little sets,
Little
and so having that
shoeboxes.
kind of quite, yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Um, I think having that really nice kind of close up, quite intimate framing, yeah, helps it feel cinematic, but also it just helps you see the details, right? And I think often, I mean, obviously in the best looking kind of AAA games, you have the poly count to really be like incredibly zoomed in, but everything is handmade. There are a few particle effects you see in the game, like a few lighting effects and whatnot, but basically everything physical is physical, right? It's real. And
Wow.
so having that tight angle just allows you to see the beauty of that and means you don't lose anything by being that close up to it because it exists.
I love it. I love it. So this all these little items there in the shelves are actually little items placed in there
Yeah,
by hand.
yeah, they've all been made. So Ola um, is the kind of like main artist. He's like a painter. He's like a fine art painter and illustrator. Fabi kind of builds everything. He basically works in kind of not construction. I can't think of the word. He's like a carpenter and a builder.
Uh-huh,
So
uh-huh.
he's built all of this stuff. Um, then Ola's wife Hola is like a costume designer. So she and there was another one I can't remember the name of now. I apologize. But they sewed and made all of the costumes. So yeah, it's like a huge team effort. But
And what a synergy
everything
to
is
like
built.
everybody having their own little strength coming together and bringing this to life. I mean, imagine I'm just spotting there's some Warhammer 40k miniatures in the back. I think 40k they are definitely Warhammer.
Yeah, it's
Imagine
it's Age of Sigmar
it.
mostly.
Imagine having an cinematic experience like this using actual miniatures and assets from table games to
Yeah,
to tell a story and whatnot. So
exactly.
unique, cool.
It's
So
what I love about the Slow Bros team is just how many people involved like aren't game developers. I think
mhm.
that's something that contributes to the style of the game. I mean, Onat is probably the biggest gamer, and he's the main developer behind the project. But so many people on the project just aren't games makers, and so they bring this really unusual range of influences. From the fashion to the painting to the art style to everything else. And I think that's partly why it has such a unique look, which is awesome. Yeah.
I wonder if it helped them also in the terms of production, animation, and world assets to not have to build them digitally, but have them actually as a physical assets. If that actually eased the production itself to make it a game, to have those shots in a physical form. Of course, you have to construct them in a physical form, and that takes again time. But I wonder if that is in the end an easier way, as you do with these 3D scanning of faces and have like then access to facial expressions and whatnot by having these dots on the face and then record it.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was also kind of helpful for them, not being from the genre or game creation, to create
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. It's a really good point. And this is again something they kind of expand on some of the interviews they've given recently, where it's like, a lot of people look at this and just think, oh my God, this must have been such an insane amount of work. Like, why choose such a complicated style? But these are the skills that those folks had. They didn't know how to do traditional 3D animation and all of this. Obviously, over time they brought on some people with a few more skills. Cardi is the lady who is like one of the main animators, because there is mocap, as you said. It's photogrammetry, so the physical assets are scanned in right via extremely high res kind of 3D photography, and then animated within Unity. And Cardi was likely responsible for that. So you bring in some of that expertise, but at the start, it allowed them to start making this game without traditional game making skills. And as you say, in lots of ways, it gets around a lot of technical difficulties. It has its own difficulties, of course, but making games is hard, and it's an expensive business, and making a good looking game, it can require a huge team. Really, to get stuff looking good. So it's allowed them to make Harold Halibut in a much smaller team than you might expect.
And I think they nailed, at least from the footage, I could say. We didn't start playing yet. We're going to do that after our chat and jump right into a full playthrough of the game. But I think they nailed the atmosphere. And from my experience, or from what I'm seeking in a game, is if the atmosphere can catch me, then I'm kind of can overlook about all the other parts being less polished or not so wow in terms of like if you look at gameplay and whatnot. A great comparison, and might shock a few people, is the Witcher saga. I liked the books, I liked the storyline, but the gameplay itself was so loopy and so repetitive and boring that I just played it for the sake of the story and the atmosphere, and didn't really enjoy the gameplay loop itself. So very intrigued. So they nailed, for me at least, the atmosphere already, and the story sounds intriguing. It gives me a little bit kind of like different looking Bioshock vibes of this. In Bioshock, Rapture being a city underwater, this here being in a ship. Curious to find out why it's underwater, and also, since I have you here, Danny, you've been behind the head behind the whole story plot and the whole storylines and characters that have been spread to life. Where did you grab your influence of, or was there even influence of like other fictions works and whatnot that made you write this?
Yeah, absolutely. You're gonna have to stop me if I start rambling, because I love this question, because I love talking about influences. So just quickly, like the core guys and team, so Onat, Ola, etc. They were actually the ones that came up with the kind of overall story, like the overarching narrative. I gave a few pointers once I came on board, but they were basically responsible for like the actual story. And then when I joined the team, it was to basically put words into the mouth of all of the characters and help develop their personalities and write the script. So huge credit obviously to them for the overall narrative, but we were always on the same wavelength, and I mean, that's part of what made it such a joy to work with all of them in the Slow Bros. And yeah, they're such a wonderful bunch of people. It's been an amazing process. But in terms of the script, which is what I can talk authoritatively about, I think so. My influences come from a really wide range of places as well. I studied English and film at uni, so I've read, I read a ton of books. I've watched a lot of very weird films. I love I love games. I've grown up playing games, but I've always tried to draw on influences from all walks of life. Which I think if you're wanting to write, a game that's a little bit different to say just your usual kind of Call of Duty or your normal like AAA thing where it's just a power fantasy, and we need those games. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm not throwing shade, but some games are very gamey in their writing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I'm a huge fan, and I've been very influenced by the works of people like Joseph Heller, so Catch 22, Kurt Vonnegut, his novels, Infinite Jest, which is always a book that people take the piss out of if you cite as an influence because it's quite pretentious. But David Foster Wallace, I think, was an incredible writer. The thing that I love about those kind of books and authors is they manage to bring a certain amount of absurdity into the script. Almost a Kafkaesque kind of absurdity to the logic. Catch 22, the famous logic puzzle of you've got to be, can only be exempt from the army, basically from the air force if you're insane. Can only leave on the grounds of insanity, but to ask to leave proves that you're sane, right? So you can never.
Okay,
that's the catch 22.
Yeah.
So, but these authors bring like a certain hopefulness, like a certain optimism into the absurdity and the tragedy. So there's this really bittersweet kind of feeling. And often people don't understand each other, in those kind of books. This is something you also see in some more kind of like British comedy, TV films, like Peep Show or The Office, or I don't know if anyone's seen The Detectorists on Netflix, which is absolutely hilarious. But I love this feeling of like no one ever quite understands. There's a lot of misunderstanding, I think there's a lot of joy and humanness and comedy that comes out of this feeling of we can never really 100% know someone else. And getting what we really feel across to people is difficult, right? And I think this is something that everybody goes through. But it can be funny, it can be sad, it can be tragic, and it means that when you get those moments of genuine connection, and this is a huge theme in the game, when Harold meets the fishy friend, again, not a huge spoiler, you can see it in the trailers, the new kind of life form that changes his life, really. It's all about trying to find that connection, despite language barriers, despite not being able to communicate in the same language or whatever. So those kind of things, and obviously the films of Wes Anderson, everybody sees the game and says it's influenced by Wes Anderson, and like it is to an extent, right? But there's a lot more than just a couple of Wes Anderson films that are coming into this. But that's the vibe, It's about friendship, it's about communication, it's about what it means to feel at home, what home means, and finding your place in life, really.
Wow. So I sense a very profound storyline, and I think before we're gonna start playing it later on a little bit, I'll get ready and put probably a tissue box somewhere because I have a sense that it might become very emotional. But yeah, that sounds like a bunch of a good array of influence that went into the work of Harold Halibut, and just got me personally even more intrigued to see the storyline play out. In terms of like playing the game, I guess it's more of like an, what's that fancy word that people use nowadays? Walking simulator, where you like interact with things, where you walk around and have a look at things, and it's more of like, in a sense, of like watching a movie, but you can interact with assets and choose certain things to do. So the game loop is in terms of like walking around and exploring and interacting. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think, calling it kind of an interactive film is quite fair. We see story as gameplay. This is something that it's a really interesting debate, both in game design, in the industry and among fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much gameplay does a game need for it to be a game? and it's an interesting debate. For us, good story is gameplay, but of course, there has to be a reason for it not to exist as a film. So I think the kind of gameplay loop, as it were, as you said, of Harold Halibut is the feeling of walking around. It's the tactility of walking, of talking to people. There are little kind of mini games and interactions that we use. None of them are kind of particularly advanced. Like, for example, there's a bit where you clean some graffiti off a wall. It's not exactly challenging gameplay, but it's interactive. And what it does, I think, is help immerse you in the world, right? Because instead of press X and see a cutscene, we're further immersing you in what it feels to be Harold. Right? We make you do the physical actions. And some of it's fun, and there are things you'll see, hopefully, when you play where we play a little bit with your expectations of what gameplay should be, and there's a few little bits of trolling and jokes in there. A good example in this moment you can see on screen right now where Harold's crawling through some vents.
Yeah.
Again, that could have been a cutscene, but we made a conscious choice. It's quite a long sequence, or it goes quite slowly. You don't really do much other than move right from right to left for a tunnel, but that action, I think, is important because it kind of helps you feel the claustrophobia. It gives you the pacing. It helps set the atmosphere in a way that, you just can't do in more of a passive experience. And the other thing I'll say is discovery. I think you mentioned this is part of the loop. There's like you go through a day-night cycle. You end each kind of mini chapter by going to bed, and there is a certain amount of discovery. If you go back to certain districts, people will have moved. They'll be doing something else. There'll be something new to discover, and so that's part of it. We don't tell you to go and do any of this stuff. You could follow the core story and miss so much of what makes this game great, I think. But that's a kind of interaction, right? You have to want to go and do the exploration and have that joy of discovery of finding stuff. Try talking to people. See where they've gone the next day if they're not in the same place. Look in every door. I think that's why it's a game and not a film.
I love the point of view in it. Dragging you out of it very, very quickly, and since you've gave life to the characters and probably also helped in developing the personality and maybe even added a few characters yourself, what is your most proud character that you've created or helped give life to, except if it was the main character, of course, like who's like your most proud work where you're like, oh, this feels so good?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Well, then the first that shoots into your head.
It's difficult just not to say Felix because I can see him on screen right now. Harold obviously is the character that undergoes the biggest change in an arc. A lot of the characters are there to help you understand, how Harold changes. But some characters, some kind of NPCs and side characters do have a bit of an arc themselves as well. I think I do have a soft spot for Felix.
Okay.
Especially
Felix.
Without giving anything too much away. He's the young boy you see in this sequence.
I'm curious to find out why Felix.
Yeah. He's, when you're writing a younger character, like a kind of, I don't know how old Felix is. He's probably about 12 or 13 or something. You get to kind of re-engage with that childhood perspective on life and the frustration. Writing Felix gave me, when I say gave me a chance to express, it's never about just making a character a voice piece for your own experiences, but you've got to put some of yourself into every character, right? And Felix is a good chance to re-engage with topics like how you think your life is going to become. What was Felix is in school, right? And he struggles with it a bit, and what does that mean? And kind of, how do your parents shape your life? Who do you want outside of your parents to be the people that influence you? Who do you look up
Oh.
to? Um, and Felix is in a strange situation, you know, because yeah, he's growing up. He's one of the first generation on this ship. He's never known Earth, and that's like just a really interesting space to explore. Really, how that shapes a younger mind. So I think, yeah, I'm quite pleased with how Felix turned out, and hopefully, yeah, you'll all enjoy getting to know him a bit. He's a bit of a cheeky chap at the beginning of the game, but yeah, he grows up in his own way.
Well, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to find out more about every citizen of the ship and explore their day-to-day business and find out what the story plot is and what Harold Halibut is going through. At the end, before I thank you for letting me pry your brain and sending you off, I want to do this kind of like blitz questioning where I just have some quick questions and you just answer them as quickly as possible, whatever pops into your brain. It'll be just 4 or 5, so don't be too afraid. I'm gonna bombard you here. Really quickly, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite game?
Baldur's Gate 2.
Ooh, dog or cat?
Cat, definitely cat. Yeah, I've got 2 cats. Rescued,
Okay.
yeah, 2 sisters, little black cats.
Here. On top or below?
Below.
Okay. Favorite music?
Like genre or band?
Can be either.
Okay. Probably like metal, like metalcore. I'm gonna say a band called Sick, Sikth.
Well.
They're like gent. Yeah.
I'm gonna blend it
incredible
in the
band.
video.
Yeah.
And last but not least, favorite book.
It's got to be Catch 22.
Catch 22. Well, there we go. That's my script. It flies away. Thank you kindly, Danny, for joining us and taking your precious time to give us a little bit of an insight behind Harold Halibut. And I think these kind of interactions for me as a player, and I'm gonna hear it from the audience afterwards, gives us a better understanding and start into the game. So I think I will end up appreciating a lot more what the game is all about and how it plays, having this chat and conversation and knowing a little bit the whys and hows and how this whole thing came together than just blindly install it and play it. Of course, still can be joyful, but I think this kind of like elevates it for me personally to the next level, to have the kind of like influence personal draws and mindsets of why is this looking how it is and what was the influence back there. And it's, I don't know, it opens my horizon a little bit more, and I hope for those watching the VOD as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah. Hope I've done a good job of representing the truth of the game from Ona and Ola and everyone else on the team's perspective as well. And yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much for having me on, and yeah, for the opportunity to talk a bit about it. And yeah, really hope you all enjoy playing it. Remember my top tip: remember L2 or whatever button it is on the keyboard is zoom in. There's a dedicated zoom in button.
Okay, we're gonna find
right. So you can really zoom in and see what's going on. And yeah, just talk to everyone. Take your time. Try and role play as a janitor.
I love it.
And,
I love it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
definitely will.
Enjoy.
I just saw Narias pop up here in chat. He had a question of like, I mean, it's probably hard to answer, but as being part of the development team, where would you say that you feel proud or okay with when a player said, I spend X amount of time with your game? Would you want them to see them be the completionist to try out everything and see everything? Or you like already, and he played the main story, we're happy?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I
a
think
tough
especially
question.
yeah, it's a really interesting question. Thank you. With this kind of game, I think the nicest thing is when we hear that players have really taken the time to explore every nook and cranny, you know, because there is a lot of stuff. There's little secrets, like I say, there's little things to find because of the handmade nature of it. We've really, well, I say it's all credit again to everyone else on the team. I only did the words, but they built this stuff with their hands, and things have been put there for you to find and to look at really closely. So I think you could probably speed through the story in 7 hours or something if you really, really wanted to. Probably quicker if you went as fast as you can. But yeah, what makes us feel really, really happy is when people just go slow, look at the details, and try and find everything. So
that would probably me stretching out the gameplay to, I guess, 30 hours to 40. Looking at everything and trying to understand why is this named so. Or nice, I love it. Danny, thanks you kindly. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I hope to chat and hear from you very soon again.
Absolutely. Oh, I just see that one last question. I'll tell you what, I'll answer a couple. I'll join into chat. If there's any more last questions, I'll answer them in chat while you play.
Okay.
So I'll let you get started. Yeah, thanks again. Speak to you in a bit. Bye.
Wow, Chad. I'm excited. How often did one of the figures or environments break? That is a nasty question. That is a nasty question to ask, in my opinion. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was a Danny from the writer of the story to Harold Halibut, and I am very intrigued to jump with you in this cinematic sci-fi uniqueness that the game is, and explore something different than we have normally here. So otherwise we have strategy or high action-packed RPGs like we just finished Baldur's Gate 3. For those wanting to watch it, we have a full playthrough running on YouTube. I think the last episodes will come out around this month and the next weeks of the next month to catch up the whole playthrough of it. So plenty of to watch. And yeah, with no further ado, let's jump into the game. Hosty is already very elevator-like. I love it. So my question would be, I will hide any of the UI here where I'm standing, but it looked like very centered overall with the cinematics, so I think we should be good. So let's see here. There we go. Harold Halibut. Start a new game. Chat, I hope you're ready. Drinking horns in chat if you are. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Daddy, again. Let me know how the audio mix is of the game. If it's not too loud. And I'll let you enjoy the intro. Just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. These don't have big krakens. Halibut.
Harold, I'm afraid I need you to come with me.
Oh, hi, Major. What's the matter? Is that leak bothering you again?
It's your fine, your unpaid fine.
I had a fine?
You still do. Tubing without the proper credit on your tube card. Can you settle it now?
No. But wait, I'm sure I topped it up.
Improper tube card management, Halibut. You surely recall that since last week, the Energy District tubes require your tube card to be topped up with blue credit if an onward journey to the social district is intended, in addition to the usual weekly turquoise credit.
Wait, but only last month it was a green.
I don't make the rules, Harold, but the rules make me. Now let's get you over to the fine secretary so we can all get on with our day.
This feels already way too real. I'm out of here. Bye. Wrong button. This feels too real. Finding.
Fell
Costs not
foul
paid.
of the end-user insufficient funds clause. I'm afraid if you really can't pay, you're going to have to think of someone who can.
I guess that means you'll have to wait for the professor again. Who knows what she sees in you? Right, I'm needed elsewhere. There's a disturbing rise in the number of people traveling without the appropriate tickets recently. I hope for both our sakes not to see you again soon, Harold.
And in 15,342.5 AC, we held the first
And here we are.
satisfaction survey.
Here we
and
are.
underwater
The journey
employee
starts.
initiatives.